Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for joining me for an interview. Why don't we just start out with you letting everybody know how you became an entrepreneur and how your business has evolved over the years?
It's a great question. And thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to speak with you. I'm in the food world. And for many years, I went to culinary school in 2005. And when I started culinary school, I started freelancing. And I've done so many things in the food industry besides working in restaurant kitchens, because that was never anything I was interested in. But
Mhm.
I was foods. I was a private chef. I worked in catering. I did food styling for many, many years. I did production, video production, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. Writing. I'm actually working on my fourth cookbook. Blogging. But for many years, up until about 2018, 2019, I really thought of myself as just a freelancer. And I was getting
Mhm.
hired by publications and by production companies to work for them. I had a steady job doing marketing for a food client. And at some point around that time, I was burning out. I was doing so many different things on top of having two kids. And I realized I needed to focus.
Mhm.
um, I had had a food blog for a long time, but it was just kind of where I threw stuff. I was like, oh, I should have stuff on the web. And so I would like throw recipes up very inconsistently, very randomly. And it occurred to me that it would the time was right for me to turn that into a business and to get
Mhm.
smart about it. So around that time, I guess, is when you can say I became an entrepreneur, in the sense that I started this business of a food blog, and with the intention of that becoming my primary source of income, which it did.
That's awesome. And I never knew that about you, that you had freelance in so many different things, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that where you have this skill set that you can apply in so many different ways and you can try things until you find the one thing you want to stick with for the most part.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, like, I think when all of us, we look back at our journey, and all of those skill sets that I developed, they all have benefited the work I do today.
Mm.
So I had to teach myself how to use a camera. I had no idea I was like, I could do the food stylist stuff,
Mhm.
but I didn't know how to do a camera or how to do video or any of that. So
Yeah.
I learned it all, and it's really benefited my work. So I would just want to say that, for even for people, if they feel like they're doing something that's so not what they're supposed to be doing, I can almost guarantee that whatever you're doing is going to inform what you end up doing when you find that soul's passion, maybe down the road a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. So my next question for you is what's one life experience that has shaped what you value and how you run your business today as a leader? I know we talked a lot about your past experiences and the skills you developed, but any sort of life thing that comes to mind as well, that it can be anything big or small.
Great question. And I think for me, it's not one thing, it's almost a series of micro things.
Mhm.
So I have to say, for me being a business owner, it took me a long time to embrace that word and to even think of
Mhm.
myself as an entrepreneur, because growing up, I had zero women in my life who were entrepreneurs. My mom was a
Mhm.
teacher, and I had many other friends, moms who worked, but I just didn't have anybody who was a woman running her own business. And so I didn't know that that was a viable path for me, even when I started on the path. And it
Mhm.
took, I think, a lot of those awakening moments were me finding people that were doing what I wanted to do, and really learning from women who were at that time blogging and making a business out of blogging, and realizing that I could do the same and to get empowered through other people. And these days, I think the people that are inspiring me and empowering me on my journey are women who are running businesses in ways that don't look like anything that has existed in the past, who are really doing things their own way, who are not conforming to this idea of what a business needs to look like or
Mm-hmm.
how a work-life balance needs to look like. I'm really inspired by those people. So not one huge event, but like a lot of series of little events, and certainly I guess a lot of inspiration from other women and who are also entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I can relate because my mom is very entrepreneurial. When I was younger, she had a jewelry business, but it was on the side and she did work a full-time job. But I didn't really know anyone who had a business as their sole source of income. And I did very much the same where I saw other women online who are graphic designers, learned a lot from them. And I love what you mentioned about not conforming to even what's become traditional in entrepreneurship, because I'm seeing more of that shift now of really wanting your business to support your life and to make the impact that you want and not running the business and moving your life around that.
Yeah, exactly. That was really well stated.
So my next question kind of goes with that, but a little different. How did you find your voice in a saturated industry? Because there's no shortage of food content creators, but I really admire you and your perspective. So did that come naturally, or was that something you had to work at over time?
Mm. So it's such an interesting question because I wrote my first three books, and they were direct expressions of where I was in my life. These books were single topic books. One was on food processor meals, easy meals. One was on
Mm,
bowls, buildables, and one was on slow cooker meals. And they really reflected where I was as a mom raising kids, just in my life. And I had my food blog. The blog itself started as a way for me to use my voice, and it
mhm,
ended as a way where I completely lost my voice. And I
mm,
don't want to speak for all food bloggers here. This was just my experience. But
sure.
for that blog to be a business, I had to start writing in a smart way where search engines could find the recipes.
Mhm,
So this is a search engine optimization. And at the end of that experience, I was really writing exclusively for Google. I was writing for search engine optimization, and I lost my voice. And in that process, I got really sick. It was like my whole
mhm,
body was just telling me it's time to reclaim what you want to say. And I mean, this is kind of going into a little bit more than what you asked, but I literally got sick. No one knew what was going on. I had massive joint pain, massive fatigue. And in that time, I realized that I had to let my blog go. And ironically, it was making more money than it ever had
mhm,
before. But from a soul perspective, I was totally burned out.
yeah,
So I gave myself this summer, you know, thankfully, my work is built largely on passive income at this point. So I was able to take 3 months off, and I had no idea what was coming next. I knew it was interesting because the book I'm currently writing and that I'm currently working on, I started working on that before all of this happened. Like
okay,
that book became this avenue for me to start to explore what I wanted to say again. And it was
mhm,
really exciting. So I knew the book was like this thing that was happening, and it was connecting me back to myself. I didn't know where my business was going to go. After a few months, it was almost like a download. My husband had mentioned a year or two earlier,
mhm,
he'd said to me, mind, body, spirit, food. That's what you love, Nikki. You
mhm,
love the connection of all of it. And I wrote it down, and I didn't look at it again. And
mhm,
all of a sudden it was like a September day. And I was like,
mhm,
oh, that's it. That's the name of what I'm doing next. And that ended up turning into my new newsletter, which is called Mind, Body, Spirit, Food, and my podcast. And it's just been so fun. So my blog still exists. I have not been active on it, although I am going to start uploading some new content just to keep it alive because a lot of
mhm,
people use those free recipes. But the newsletter is really my passion project. And it's where I get to explore this intersection of how we feed ourselves with our cultural identities, with
Mhm.
who we are and what we want and how we be human,
Mhm.
how we be human on this plane. So long story short, right now I speak purely from my heart on my newsletter, and that is, it's just such a joy. And I don't even compare or really look at what other people are doing.
Mhm.
um, it's not really a comparison for me, it's just what lights me up.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who can relate to that in some way. And especially I know when you're creating content where you know you need to reach people, like you mentioned on your blog, and so then you're writing SEO, I can totally see how that would take your voice away. So I love that you took a step back, found what felt right for you, and then found the way that you wanted to share that with the world. So good for you, because that took a lot of courage.
It was scary as hell.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
will
I'm sure.
definitely say that. It was scary, and yet, like when I started the podcast, so Maya did my graphic design, and you were such an inspiration. You know, I was asking you questions like, I think I want to do this thing, and the podcast just happened. And I have to say, like, I didn't ever have to effort it.
Mhm,
I found an audio engineer right away from a friend, and I just started doing it. I started on
mhm.
Zoom, and then I moved platforms, but it's been such a joy because I get to speak with these people who inspire me, and hopefully that then makes an impact on those who listen. So yes, there was fear, and I want to say when the time was right, the time was right, and things just kind of unfolded really beautifully.
Yeah, I feel like that's when you know it's really meant to be, where things just start working out and,
Yeah.
you don't have to work as hard to get there. Well, you put the work in, but, stuff
Yeah.
falls into place on its own. And so, what has been the biggest change with that, have you noticed? I know you mentioned you get to speak from your heart more, but anything else you've noticed in the shift of going from the food blog to a newsletter and a
Mm.
podcast?
Yeah, some of it is my own. Like, I kind of like circling back to what I mentioned before about how I view work and how I view
Mhm,
life. And the blog felt like such a hustle, and I was always behind, and there was
mhm,
always a million things to do to keep up and to get the next ranking and to compete with this keyword and
mhm,
to do more photos and then videos, and then wait, now this is the new thing, and then oh, and then the social media, you've got to do the social media to promote it. And it was a race. I felt like I was racing.
mhm,
And with this work that I do presently, I cannot race. It's not
mhm,
how this stuff comes out. And the rest, I'm still developing weekly recipes and doing photographs. And I've had to find so much trust in slowing
mhm,
down. I'm not a person who goes slow naturally.
mhm,
I guess I'm like, I have found a lot of safety in my life in
mhm.
productivity, even when that productivity was spinning wheels.
Yeah.
So a huge shift for me has been in slowing down and getting super intentional about the content I'm producing. About, I mean, I cut back so much on social media, and the stuff that I do
Mhm,
post is intentionally posted. It's not just filling up a week's worth of scheduling, which is kind of
mhm,
what I used to do. With all of that has come an immense amount of fulfillment. But like I said, it's a little bit scary to just not
mhm,
do all the things to really stay committed to working in a pace that feels right and that feels authentic to me.
mm. Yeah, I really am seeing the shift in a lot of entrepreneurs now,
Mm.
and I know we're talking about food content creation right now, but even as a designer, I've seen other designers or other creative entrepreneurs who are in a different industry do a similar thing where they're like, I'm tired of the hustle. I want to find a way to do this more sustainably in a way that makes sense for me.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you mentioned, I designed your logos for the podcast and the newsletter, and it's been so neat to see how you do still integrate the recipes and everything that you love into the podcast and what you're doing that's new. So even though it's not necessarily a food blog anymore, I feel like there are still those familiar elements there for your audience.
Yeah, I love, I mean, cooking is my creative outlet. I love it. And I started to lose that a little bit. So it's
Mhm,
fun now that I get to develop these recipes. And since it's in a newsletter, I get to write about whatever I want. I get to
mhm,
create any recipe. It doesn't matter if it's going to be searchable or not. It can be like a crazy, a crazy recipe, or it can be something that's requested from one of my readers, and it can be
Mm-hmm.
kind of arcane, but I get to do really what feels fun. And I feel like that's so important, because when I have that passion, I think that's what spreads, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
makes for meaningful content.
Definitely. And I was just thinking it'd probably be great if we stopped. And can you explain for a second what a member-supported newsletter is, just for anyone who's not familiar?
Yeah, so I'm on Substack, but I'm sure there are other platforms as well. And it's a newsletter that you can subscribe to for free, and all of the podcasts are free. And I do every Friday, I send out a new essay and a brand new recipe. And so the essays are all free. And if you are a free subscriber, you get one of the recipes per month, as you get the full
Mm-hmm.
recipe. For the paid subscribers, which is $5 a month, they get every recipe. So every week they get a new recipe. They also get bonus content every other week. And they have access to the full recipe archive and some other fun perks. Like, my plan is to start doing cooking classes and things like that down the line. So it becomes this community where the I know that the readers who, even if you're a free subscriber, that's great, but you're there to really support the creator. I don't
Mm-hmm.
make any money off of this except for the readers who are paid. They pay for the content, and that feels good to work for a reader instead of work for advertising. So in the blog
Mm-hmm.
model, I got my income through ads on the website. And that's why people laugh when they go to a food blog and there's like a million pop-ups and a million ads, and they've got
Sure.
to scroll through all this content to get to the recipe. And that's because that's how bloggers make money. That's the only
Mm-hmm.
way. None of us should be working for free, but it's kind of this third party way of working for an income. Whereas now I get to, so the people who love my work get to support it directly, and I think that feels good. It's an exchange that feels good on both sides.
Yeah, thank you for breaking that down for everyone, because I'm sure there'll be people, if they're looking for alternatives to a blog, it's a great solution to know about. I was really impressed when you first explained it to me. It kind of reminds me of YouTubers. There's a lot of YouTubers who have additional membership subscriptions along with their
Mm.
YouTube channels, where everyone gets some content for free, which I love. But then if you subscribe to a paid plan, there's a little bit more for you. And I'm not totally familiar with it, but I have noticed more content creators doing it.
Yeah, I feel like this is really the way of the future. I see it
Mhm,
happening on almost every platform. So that, like I said, it's like that value exchange. And I think
mhm,
people, especially within the food content space, people expect to get stuff for free. So it can be a bit of an explanation, not exclamation,
mhm,
explanation, to make people aware that there's a considerable amount of work that goes into the development of recipes. I mean, I test each recipe minimum of 2, but often 4 times
mhm,
before I publish it. I also photograph it. I make a video reel. So there's a lot, and then the groceries and all of that. It's just a lot of
mhm,
expense. Um,
definitely.
and so I think people are starting to kind of be aware of that, of like supporting creators for
Mhm.
what they do.
Yeah, I love that. And with that, as you were talking about recipe development, let's go ahead and talk about your cookbooks, because you mentioned earlier you're working on your fourth cookbook, which is amazing. So what's that been like learning how to write a cookbook for the first time and then having it evolve over the years?
Yeah, so my first cookbook was in 2018, and it's called the Food Processor Family Cookbook. And that was an interesting experience because the publisher came to me with this idea, and they had a crazy short deadline.
Mm,
But the topic, the reason they came to me is because there's a topic I had written about, because I used my food processor like my sous chef. And I had a
mhm,
1 year old. I had at that time a 6 year old and a 1 year old. And the 1 year old's, all of her meals were just basically foods that we were eating, processed up
sure.
into foods that she could better handle. And so while they approached me, it was a topic that totally made sense. I was really excited to do it. And it was insane. It was
Mhm.
insane that I wrote a cookbook in that short. I mean, I had a couple months to do it. And you think about
Wow.
writing, 75, 85 brand new recipes, testing them all. It was a whirlwind. And for that book, I had no say on the design element, which was the only part of that process that really brought me to tears because
Mhm.
once they formatted and designed the book, it just didn't reflect what I would have chosen. They put a
Mhm.
chicken pot pie on the cover, and there wasn't a chicken pot pie recipe in the book, which I
Oh.
had to add. But the only element to that recipe that used the food processor is the crust. And so it just felt like such a stretch. And so it was what it was. The book did really well. So I'm
Mhm.
super grateful. And that book opened the door to my next two books, which were with a different publisher, a publisher I've come to love. I'm working with the same publisher for my fourth book. And it taught me how to write a book.
Mhm.
It taught me just like how to create the spreadsheet to keep myself organized. And then with each book has gotten easier and easier because I I just, you know what you're doing. It's like
Mhm.
practice, So the second two books were such a joy to write. And this last book, like I said, I started writing it when I was totally still blogging and had no idea that I would be doing what I'm doing now. No idea.
Mhm.
But this book became as my practice of cooking and eating shifted. I started to write about that. And it's really
Mhm.
about bringing intention into the kitchen. And that book then became actually the genesis of the newsletter and podcast. And it happened so slowly. It was really lovely because I spent 2 years playing around with the book. It kept evolving and changing
Mhm.
before I showed it to anybody, before I showed it to an agent or anybody. So by the time it got to the publisher, it was like in a pretty good shape. So while I had to spend this last couple of months really finishing it and like making it exactly what I wanted it to be, I had lots of time and lots of space to create, and that felt
Mhm.
like such a gift because
Mhm.
the recipes are all they're all well, I can't share too much, but
Yeah. Don't give too many spoilers.
but I think I needed the time for this book. But even with this book, like I use the same Google Sheets spreadsheet
Mhm.
that I had developed for my other books, and I use my same method of testing recipes. So all of that has continued. That's all been the same throughout all four books.
That's awesome, and I love what you shared there, that doing it for the first time really helped you understand the process and develop your own process, and then you also learned what you didn't like, what you wanted to do differently next time. Because I think sometimes we're afraid just to try something for the first time because we don't know how to do it, but
Yeah.
I love the idea of learning as you go.
Yeah, and there was something about that first book of being on such a short deadline that
Mhm.
I couldn't let fear get in my way. Like I
Mhm.
had to jump in like fully going strong. So in a way, I'm really grateful for that because I probably would have like second guessed myself and
Yeah.
this and that. And I really had no time for any of that.
Mhm.
And thank goodness, because it did just I just had to figure it out as I went. And that's sometimes the best way to do it.
For sure. Well, Nikki, this has been so amazing getting to know you better and having you share your story. I know you've shared a lot that will be helpful to everybody listening. As we wrap up, I want to ask you, what's the best piece of encouragement you've received about being an entrepreneur?
Ooh, that is a really tough question. The best piece of encouragement. Okay, the best advice I've been given is that there are cycles to business.
Mm-hmm.
Just like there are cycles to nature, just as
Mm-hmm.
this, like there are cycles in our bodies, there are cycles to business, and there are going to be times when we need to go inward and become the seed and give ourselves the nourishment and the space to be able to create again. So, not to be afraid to take breaks and
Mm-hmm.
to get still and to really sit in that trust that as a creator, you will create again,
Yeah.
even when
Mhm.
you need a real break.
Yeah, I love that. That's really great advice. Okay, so can you let everyone know where they can connect with you further?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Nicki Sizemore. I'm also on TikTok, but it's a little random over there. And you can find my newsletter. It's Mind, Body, Spirit, Food. That's also the name of my podcast. And if you Google that, you'll go right there. And then my blog is still alive, and there's hundreds of free recipes, and that's from scratchfast.com.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Nicki. And I'll be sure to put all the links in the show notes for this episode as well.
Thank you so much, Maya.